Well, hi, Rebecca. Thanks for helping me with my project.
You're welcome, Nathan. Hi. Thanks for showing interest in what I've been doing. I don't know much about Artemis, and I would like to learn more about it. I'm very excited about space exploration. I just transitioned a defense contracting company into aerospace with a specific interest in planetary terraforming, and I've got some big ideas about atmosphere.
Oh, wow. Yeah, could you tell me more about it?
I would love to. I think that if we send a methane hydrate block to the moon and then strike it with some type of a rail gun using a sulfurous iron rail and just heat that up, we could perform like instant atmosphere basically. And plants prefer carbon 12, which would be the result of a sulfurous hot thing coming in contact with methane hydrate, at least theoretically. And since carbon 12 is heavier than oxygen, I think it would stand a good chance of creating an enveloping atmosphere that could offer early plant life a chance to take hold.
On the moon and the 1/6 gravity?
Yes, it's heavier than oxygen, so I think with a massive disruption basically of such, if it's a large enough proportions, it would stick just because there's gravity and carbon 12 is heavy. The thing is, I mean, there's always drawbacks and it might not necessarily work, but it's not like we don't have blocks of methane hydrate just sort of laying around because we do.
And what would be the atmospheric pressure, you think?
I have no idea. I really only just started thinking about it, and mostly from a would plants thrive in it, or could plants even possibly grow in it perspective. And I'm so early on right now in the research that I haven't developed a product. It's all conceptual, and I would honestly hope that people with better engineering could create products before I could. So I kind of just put it out there a lot that I think this is a very real possibility that, and there are so few of those. And I think a dirty bomb would probably be second, like right after blowing off a lot of carbon 12. If it sticks and the moon is red, hit that thing with something like it's germing.
Um, uh, are you familiar with what's the lowest atmospheric pressure that plants will actually be able to survive in?
I haven't done that much research into it, and I'm not yet familiar with it. I was in body armor prior to last year, and this will be my break-even year. I'm fortunate to have access to students when they can go back to school through Dean Karp at Harvard. So I will know more, but currently I'm just sort of like um, sniffing out what's potentially possible, and then disproving that if that's what happens, or proving it if that turns out to be the case.
Well, that
So
sounds really fascinating. Other than in kind of enclosing spaces on the moon, I didn't really think it was realistic to contemplate it having a atmosphere. So that's exciting work.
right, widespread atmosphere, I think would start at the ground level, funny enough, and then small hardy plants that could survive fire, their seeds at least, in adjunct with mycelia, which I understand a lot of fungus is just like, already in space. Uh, the common pinhead mold actually as a spore will travel out in the upper atmosphere where nothing should be able to survive. Just use the Earth rotation to find ripe strawberries. So I would think that there's more potential that we just have failed to look at because it's so ground floor, right? Before people were like, that's crazy colonizing space. We're colonizing Earth. You can
But
do both.
everything is crazy until it happens. Then it's just sort of, yeah, of course.
Exactly. It's all impossible till you do it. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm loving light sail technologies and some of the ways that things move in zero gravity because it's not something I'd considered before. I was really into the ballistic event and a little bit into like frequency and things. So my dad was involved in the shielded hangar project back when it was impossible. And so I learned that with physics, everything is possible.
Well, I think you bring up some concepts that might tie in to some of other people's reservations about us going into space and developing it, and that is potentially there being life in places that's unexpected that we could disturb. And I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
We disturb life all the time because we are alive. I mean, we kill stuff to eat it. So on some level, we have to understand that chaos is a way of nature. And as much as we'd love to interfere with that or just, say it's not fair, that is the way that things are. And for one thing to grow, another thing most likely will die. So we live with that every day. I think it's always been a hitch for me that we look at nature like, oh, we can't disturb it by being beneficial toward it, but we can certainly exploit it and destroy it if we need to, because the economy. I'm like, well, that's ridiculous because you can't breathe the economy, so why not go out there and be beneficial to the wildlife in ways that, like, scientifically make sense? Because I think we are so creative and adaptable that we could have a thriving planet that we live on right now and leave it and go cause other planets to thrive. And I don't have a real, like, ethical problem with that. I think if we turn the moon red with an atmosphere, people will freak out religiously and claim that we're like this, you know, the doom of the whole world or apocalypse sign or whatever, but it's still worth trying. It's worth doing.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and sort of what they've said drives them in terms of their space activities. Elon Musk, Elon Musk, and creating another city on Mars to provide kind of like that backup to humanity, but also to kind of take that first real meaningful step that causes us to have economic reasons to go from here to Mars and back. And that in itself will cause the technology to develop and expertise to develop and the whole ecosystem to allow for us to go and explore the entire solar system.
Right. When people get excited, they can do anything. Tell me more about the Artemis project, and I would love to know more about it.
Well, it's NASA's name for going back to the moon in 2024. So NASA's planning to land people back on the moon in 2024, and I thought it'd be good to go around and start collecting some perspectives. At this time, as people become more aware of it, as we make progress, when the people are actually on the moon, and then afterwards, and just sort of get a feel for what the people's ideas are. So it's a really random sampling of views and thoughts. Just last week, NASA announced 3 contractors that are doing a 10-month study on human landing systems. Blue Origin's one of them, leading a team of kind of, a team of contractors called the National Team. And then Dynetics was another one. And SpaceX also was selected as being one of the people for their 10-month study, with their Starship and creating a version of that that's optimized for going between lunar orbit and the lunar surface. So
that sounds exciting to me too. I was watching the trajectory of, I think it was an asteroid or something, on just a couple links on the internet that I followed, and I thought, well, the next comet, if we ever get a comet that close to Earth, we should just like poke it towards Mars if it's the water bearing. Just like have your ocean right now. Sounds crazy, but I mean, there's just so much. It's like the ground floor. I mean, space really is. It's just passing from imaginary to reality right now in my lifetime, which I find so exciting. So I'm constantly thinking about these things and then trying to piece together like how it would even be possible to have another big blue planet, right nearby with food growing on it. And I really think that as far as like growing food and tending to water supplies and oxygen supplies, it will mean more to us here on Earth to value this planet we have instead of killing it off, to really bring forth life. When we see it happening on another planet and is so precious and instrumental to the survival of the people on that planet, I think it will really tie it back to Earth itself and the way we treat life, the way we appreciate life. So I'm already hopeful and excited.
Indeed, I think in 1968, Apollo 8, I believe it was, went around the moon and took the Earthrise picture that you see right there. And within a couple of years, we had our first Earth Day, and EPA was founded, and there's like this real environmental movement that got started, and a lot of people credit that with this picture, in the sense that Earth is so small and fragile and
Right.
precious.
To see our beautiful home from another perspective. And it is meaningful. I mean, even to the individual, and to see us as a group sort of getting more excited about life and our potential, that can only mean good things. I really do think that enthusiastic people make the best stuff. Like, you get people excited and enthusiastic about something, impossible becomes possible almost immediately. I think it will go the same direction where life begins to thrive and we understand how technology and the living world cooperate to make our lives better. And then improving quality of life becomes more the perspective and the question rather than economy or how we're going to bottom line make the most of it, because that's actually a code that can be hacked. And I think Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are beautifully illustrating that once you figure out that algorithm, you can make anything. And we can commodify something else, perhaps air to breathe and water to drink and, delicious plants growing everywhere. And some adorable animals.
I'm kind of curious. So regarding NASA's plans to land back on the moon in 2024, you hadn't heard of that before?
I actually had, and I was just hoping you had some sort of inside scoop. And I'm not super familiar with it in it. I've been more poring over how to make things grow at refrigerator temperatures for a while and kind of had my head in the sand. So I thought maybe there was something really super new out there. But I think even short term will seem like long term when it comes down to having good ideas and then discovering whether they're implementable or whether they're not, and to what scale. And then as far as moon disruption goes, from a very human material imperative, I would say that it's not breathable air there right now, and nothing alive on it is really as important to us as the things alive here. So I wouldn't have a problem with microbial disruption on any planet in our solar system. I don't have a problem with microbial disruption in general, because we're like a whole bucket of microbes walking around in our own environment.
Indeed, yeah. You don't make omelets without cracking a few eggs, as the expression goes.
Exactly. I think it's time to make that omelet, and we could probably make it happen pretty fast because plants like to grow, and I think we can create atmospheres or sub-atmospheres experimentally at first, which makes a little bit more sense to, excuse me, not widespread affect an entire planet. Although I would again just say that, we have a wider spread effect than we think. We've found living plankton on the outside of ISS. So I think panspermia, we're probably going to have to look at that as the real thing, and perhaps we are the genesis of it.
So what do you think about seeding the rest of the solar system, actually sending out purposely seeds to the moons of Jupiter and Mars and the moons of Saturn and
I'm
things
excited
like that?
about that. I think we should have already done it, but we might as well. I mean, we've already sent nudes. See, we should do is probably seed packages. I think we could probably create Paperlite mycelial base for with a little bit of water that's going to be frozen with seeds, and some seeds withstand and enjoy fire, and a lot of fungus doesn't care one way or the other about fire. And just send fire and water atmospheric bubbles out there to bump into other stuff.
Now, there's that whole concept of planetary protection and a whole movement around, kind of limiting the exposure to the rest of the solar system of life from Earth. What's the path to sort of changing views there? I mean, like, it almost seems like it's impossible. Either you believe we should keep it pristine or we should go and develop it. It's difficult to see how you transition from one state to the other.
Other people's ethical hangups really aren't my own. So I can just pretty much say I disagree. And then if they want to argue about it, sometimes I found I really do want to convince people on the internet, but it is also not necessary because we are all very different, and some people are going to believe in stuff that I just don't believe in and I'm not committed to. And I might believe in something that is, in opposition to what they believe in. That's okay. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. I'm going to do what I can to sort of see to it that we actually do put the seeds of life everywhere if we can and see what grows. I mean, if the whales on Europa don't like it, they can certainly kill off our plants.
Well, do you know how, like, the European Space Agency or the Chinese Space Agency or the Russian Space Agency thinks about this? I mean, I'm only familiar with like the US and, kind of like the concepts about planetary protection here, but I was wondering if one of those other agencies kind of had a more relaxed or aggressive, if you will, view towards expanding life into the rest of the solar system.
I think it's impossible that we have not already pushed the seeds of life off this planet, whether by a volcano or something else. I've also noticed that meteors and meteorites don't seem to care if they have amino acids in them either. And we should probably look at it like that. This space is chaos anyhow, so we might as well enjoy it. And I think that these other planets would be more enjoyable if perhaps there was food on them. So I don't
That
know. I'm just gonna go pragmatically. If no one wants to cooperate, I'm just gonna file my ideas down for stuff we can do later. Yeah.
indeed, no, I'm really excited about it. Personally, I think, reclaim the deserts, plant the seeds of life in places that are now dead, and just go out there and aggressively, like you said, try to make the solar system a more habitable, better place for life.
Right.
So,
Spread out a little bit and next some of these planets. It doesn't look like anybody's using them to me.
have you heard Robert Zubrin talk about Mars and life on Mars and that type of thing?
No, I don't think I have. I have a brain injury though, so a lot of the books I read were sort of deleted from my memory or sometimes reoccur in small. But I've read books lately that I was like, I don't think I've ever read this. And then got to the end and I was like, that's right, I have read it.
Yeah,
I can hide my.
he talks about, we shouldn't be so concerned about being able to find life on Mars, because finding life on Mars would be like sort of finding French people in Paris. You don't go to Paris and go, wow, I'm not sure these are French people, because they're people just like me. You're like, you obviously, and he's like, you should be able to tell, if the life is different or not. And so that shouldn't be a problem. So I thought that was.
Exactly. I think that we don't necessarily have to go about everything so defensively. It's off-putting in interpersonal interactions. So, I mean, we might as well just not be off-putting, but go exploring. And like you said, don't be surprised if there's vision to see either. We're oddly xenophobic. We're being surrounded by living creatures who look not a thing like us, but are still pretty necessary to our survival. I don't know.
What
I
do you
wouldn't expect
think?
more from xenophobic.
What do you think would be necessary to sort of have people focused on, society as a whole, like Earth as a whole, focused on expanding out in the rest of the solar system and developing space and that type of thing? I mean, do you think it's going to happen naturally? We don't have to worry about it, it's just time? Or is there something that we should be putting into our school curriculums to kind of encourage these ideas? Or are there some barriers that are already there that we need to remove somehow in terms of people's thoughts?
I think we're seeing the utility of influence in the performance of people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, because they're not only making it interesting, they're making it joyful. It's already interesting. They're basically just making a presentation. With the internet and people's increasing connectability, um, the positivity of influence is so easily obvious, like, because there are people out there just trolling and starting arguments for the sake of it. And there are other people who are just out there putting out information that is exciting or pleasant. So by creating sort of the pleasant atmosphere of a celebration of exploration around it, I think it will touch a lot of hearts. And the naysayers, they were going to say nay anyhow. It wouldn't have mattered what the idea was. Because I guess they're in a bad space or something. But I'm very excited. And it's been like a exponentially expanding excitement as I watch people make such tremendous progress. And I think they're out there as a fine example, but also presenting the information properly. And NASA is catching on too. I used to try to watch the NASA channel, and I was like, "Come on, you're creating like the atmosphere of a very dry cracker for a very interesting subject." And then I think they've started noticing that showmanship isn't really cheesy if you're just showing the truth as it is. Got to just put a little effort into it to show what makes you excited about it. If people are passionate about their jobs, other people are going to come along and be passionate about their jobs too, just as a natural result of excitement being contagious.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about who is selected for astronauts historically, it's probably the most stoic and self-controlled individuals that exist. And, they don't really come off as really passionate, enthusiastic people because you almost select people that aren't like that because you want them to be able to keep calm under any circumstance and to always keep their head. And
That's a culture of compartmentalization, and to some degree, psychologically, this sort of flies in the face of being a human being. You have to stay in touch with yourself, in that way, to like not show fear, but go ahead and show pleasure because that's better. And if you have to show fear, go ahead and show it honestly, make a big dramatic like display out of it. Like, I don't know, my dad had that. He's a military officer. And sometimes I would see him try to contain his joy also. And I was like, Dad, it's the best part of life. You gotta let that out. Keep the other stuff in, process it in your study or whatever, your little legal pads. But yeah, I've seen that culture. I think we're coming out of that a little bit as people realize, excuse me, like either they can't contain their enthusiasm or they flatly don't want to. I encourage that as like the best of life, basically, the best of us, to just go ahead and get out of our comfort zone and recognize that sometimes it's a rut that holds us back, and holding on to traditions that fly in the face of reality just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, we're emotionally, that's like 30% of our experience, and it's a lens. It's not really what we're supposed to act on, but we're supposed to definitely fuel our ideas. So if you repress that, your ideas are going to go down the tubes.
so some recent news and some a little older news. Did you hear about Tom Cruise talking about filming a movie on the International Space Station?
I did. I think that's kind of exciting, to tell you the truth, because entertainment has sort of looked at NASA from the outside, if you know what I mean. And in this way, it just sort of brings more credibility to space travel in general, because so many people look at it as the stuff of science fiction or trope. I mean, there are people who are like, the moon landing was fake. And I don't know, there's conspiracy theories that will always abound. But I think overall it should be a good thing. And SpaceX is kind of lend their vehicle, if you will, to entertainment to sort of better bring home space exploration and all the like excitement about that. Hopefully it won't be just about killing aliens.
Indeed, yeah. And then a little older news. Did you hear about Dear Moon, the Japanese billionaire who plans to send a group of artists around the moon in 2023?
No, that sounds really awesome, though. That's exciting right there. All of this just needs to happen, and I wish it could have happened faster because I'm kind of an impatient person. But I love that we're seeing all of these things occur in our lifetimes. Like when I was a little kid, I used to look at the sky and just wonder what was out there.
It's kind of, it looks like we're right on the verge of opening up space, like thought we were on the verge of doing it for several decades now. But this pandemic and the related economic impacts, and then the related political follow-on impacts after that, I just hope that nothing kind of derails the trajectory that all that was on.
I think that's force of will. It always is. That what the people want, they're kind of gonna do anyhow. And I don't know. I see the whole pandemic and pandemic response as a bit exploring control of a narrative, and a bit like germs are real and people die every day. And fear is often used as leverage in the media and by politicians and in entertainment, and marketing. So I just saw the whole thing going on and thought, well, it's, if nothing else, it's revealing to us how our daily habits affect the earth that we live on. And I don't think that anything can really derail space exploration, but it can certainly put it back a little ways, can't it? At least interfere with manufacturing.
That's right. Yeah. But do you have any personal interest in going into space if it was safe and affordable?
I at first, yes, I was like, get me off this planet. But the more I think about it, With my brain injury, I have an experimental shunt from Johns Hopkins that I got in 2009. And I wonder now about extreme changes in atmospheric pressures and even zero gravity, how that would affect my nervous system and body to have it. And also just the brain injury itself. I'm actually still a little bit afraid to fly on airplanes. So now I'm having to confront some fears that I have that may or may not be reasonable and that we don't have really any way of knowing.
Um, I would not have known you had any brain injury without you having told me. You seem very articulate and knowledgeable and thinking. Uh, I mean, could you talk a little bit more about the nature of your injury?
It's a contra brain injury. It's a mild left frontal lobe TBI. It was my speech center that was most affected, but also some short-term memory. So for a while, occasionally I would use the wrong word, almost habitually too. There were just certain words that sounded a bit alike that my brain would like toss at me first, and I would talk too fast to even know that I'd said caterpillar instead of pancake or whatever. And it took some study, which was emotionally offensive at the time, to relearn sort of how to use the rest of my brain around, I suppose, what was damaged. Um, and I don't know, it was not the best adventure in some ways because your brain is like yourself. It's not just where yourself is housed, but how it is expressed. So I had to go through some real fits about like not wanting to fill out the form like stuff. It was like homework, for recovery, but then also wanting to recover bad enough to just go ahead and get my way through it. It was ugly, but I'm really glad to be where I am now. I broke my neck too, so technically I could be paralyzed or dead or whatever. So this is definitely way better than that.
Wow, I mean, talking to you now should give a lot of people courage who might be suffering the same type of situation and having to go through a similar path.
Thank you. I didn't. I think about that sometimes, but I guess I just said it because it's interesting, I suppose. And then also, I want people to know, like, did I say the wrong word? It's not because I'm crazy. It's because I think I said the right word. I actually follow people's facial expressions pretty closely to make sure that I'm not just totally mangling a concept when I try to get it out. But overall, I just feel really fortunate, and it is a lot of work to recover. It's a lot of work to build and grow too. And before my injury, I had a defense contracting company, and I'd come up with some body armor concepts. So I had some magical thinking about whether a concept is really a product. As long as you find someone with a factory. I just did stuff kind of backwards and failed in business. And it was such an education, and I really had to get over myself emotionally to be able to enjoy the product of that education without feeling offended by it. And I think having had that experience actually helped me to recover a little bit, to recognize that it's definitely okay to make mistakes. Embarrassment is not primarily fatal, and you can keep going, and you probably should, because if you give up, you're definitely just going to lay there and get more miserable.
And that's definitely good advice. And in terms of space, if you look at Elon Musk and sort of his development of Starship that he's been doing in Boca Chica, Texas, with uh, his first prototype had a weak well and a weak weld and exploded, and the second one did the same thing, and the third one did the same thing, and then now the fourth one looks like it's stable enough, and they've attached a Raptor rocket engine to it and done some test firing, and maybe even will fly it soon, for some little short test hops. So like you said, it's about having that tenacity to succeed. It's about keep going. It doesn't matter if it's difficult or if you had a setback. The only question is, what are you going to do now?
I love that quality. I, in fact, encountered his idea. It was called Objective Force Warrior back then. I was up at Natick shopping around my soft body armor concept that I thought was a product because I was stupid. And he had this amazing concept, and they gave me his white paper and were like, "What do you think of that?" And I was like, "It's clearly written by a genius, and his understanding of computer technology and energy technology is way past me, really, like with battery tech. Zero knowledge, but I was like, it's fascinating and brilliant. But I was going for soft armor and for coverage of, basically just force mitigation at the ballistic event. So it was just two totally different things. But I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then I had to deal with people that were so shady that I finally like took my ball and went home. I was like, I'm not having a thing to do with any of you people. And he kept going and he persisted. And I think there were people talking smack about reusable rockets in 2000. And I was like, that guy's going to do it. Like, I think he's going to make it. And then so now just to watch him keep going is an inspiration to me. Cause I'm like, man, I love a person that just doesn't stop, that doesn't give up. I love that quality. So it's something I want to, cultivate in myself, because I want to be the kind of person I like to hang out with. And he's definitely inspiration to me and a motivator. Like, I was like, if he can do it, I feel like I could at least build a probe that goes to Uranus so I can make jokes about it. Like, you can do anything you put your mind to.
Indeed, and willing to put your life and effort and energy and time and focus behind too. Yeah.
Well, your life and energy and effort is going to be spent whether you sit on a couch and think about it or whether you go out and do it anyhow. So you might as well risk having to like keep pushing or piss people off to actually do the things that you really want to do. It's so much more satisfying, I imagine, having not actually accomplished all the things I want to accomplish. Like, it's satisfying to see somebody else make such a hard run, especially against oil and gas and other industries. Automotively, wow, the sack on that guy. I was just right in there like, yes, say the things because it needs to be said. We're killing the planet just because some people are scary, like, basically. So now I'm super excited about like the potential for the future, and to see people that are just really blatantly performers like an industry get out there and take the lead. I'm here for that.
It's an exciting
Taking notes.
time.
It really is. It really is.
And with the internet, you're able to get news and coverage about it step by step. And these people are like on Twitter sharing their thoughts at the weirdest times. And, you kind of almost feel like you have a front row seat.
Right. It feels closer to the actual events, doesn't it? And more personal. And not only that, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are just guys. They're just people, just like you. Just had an idea and went for it. I was talking to somebody, my ex-husband actually, and I was like, I'm going to start my defense contracting company back up again. And he's like, do you have a product? And I did like literally sit down. I was like, no, I have an idea. And he's like, that's what you did last time. And then I was like, I'm going to make a product. And that's those little aha moments, man. They make a big difference. And sometimes people get them from themselves, and sometimes you get them in a weird conversation with your ex. That much direction, it seemed so small and so fundamental, but I was still missing. And I'm getting closer to having a product. And right now, I think the concepts are just what illuminate the products. You know what I mean? Because I'm on the map as far as with edible plants that can grow in different atmospheres, which are also beneficial to humans, or clean water, or exude a lot of oxygen. Really, is kind of where I started out. And there's a ton of products you can make out of those as you're growing them, because I just grow them organically and they're healthy. So I'm getting. This is my startup year. My recovery has come far enough that I was like, I'm going to rejoin the workforce. And I was like, I don't want to work for somebody else now. So I'm going to make a real shot at just never having to work for anybody else ever.
That sounds awesome.
Are you a documentary just about this whole moon mission? Are you going to like kind of sandbag it until we have some real results? Or are you going to get it out there beforehand and get everybody pumped? Because I kind of like that last time.
Well, actually, I work from home for a software company, so most of my time is spent in front of the computer. And sometimes I could go days without really meeting anybody in person. And I created this project sort of both for the reason of trying to find out what people think about it, but then also to kind of avoid social distancing, if you will, which makes the whole thing ironic, because originally I did all my interviews in person. So, and with a lot of them with strangers, people at Starbucks or at the mall, or on the train or at the bus station or at the airport, with the idea that it would force me to go out there and talk to one person every day. And
That's all.
yeah, so it's I don't have any big vision or plan for it other than to do an interview every day, and maybe come back and make some summaries, or draw some conclusions, or harvest some insights from all the people I've talked to.
Right. So you're really making a connection, whether you can be there in person or not, because of the shared interests and excitement, which I find to be that's what makes us connectable is our stories. Anyhow, so if you have video editing abilities, and I think I've seen that you do, I can't remember, but that's amazing. That's just a way of putting all your talents to good use, doing something you like doing. That's got to make for a happy life in itself and challenging.
Yes, though I got to tell you, the commitment of doing one interview a day to the end of 2024 has its own bit of pressure, and as well. So, but we'll do it. It's about either you do it or you don't. Those are the two choices.
Right, right. I believe that you can be a triceratops or a do-ceratops.
I like it. A triceratops or a do-ceratops. That's great.
I do a lot more thinking about doing than I do actual doing, but I managed to write a sci-fi novel last year, and I learned that I'm not an editor. Nor could I afford one. So, but I'm learning editing skills now and what that really means to do that, like the flow of a book. And my next one I think will be even better. And I have a friend that said, if you're making products to sell and they don't hit right off the bat, making products, like one of them will. He writes apps. And I was like, that's genius. I want to keep writing anyhow, so I might as well format it and edit it and put it out there because somebody might like it.
Yeah, I was recently reading about John Grisham, the legal mystery writer person, and he used to be a lawyer, and he overheard some people talking about a case that he thought would be a really good book. And he decided that he was going to come into work 3 hours early and write every day, and he wrote A Time to Kill. And he got it published, and it wasn't that big of a hit. But then later on, he wrote The Firm, and that became a big hit. And then everybody rediscovered his first book, and now all he does is writing. So it's
Which
pretty
is
amazing.
awesome. Yeah, I love that. He's a fascinating writer too. Like his ability to tell a story is top notch. Stephen King too. Early on, because I've been a writer my whole life. I just never really published. I really didn't feel entitled to. I think I could credit Elon Musk for that also. That he was just like, you don't wait for somebody else to like invite you to do it. That you do it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's true. And it was in an interview. And I know to apply that to everything else, I was just holding myself back when it came to publishing. And I'm saying like that I'm an amateur, which is notable and true to the case. And there was stuff I could learn and apply. So I'm doing that now. And I always like to be diversified in my interest, to have one thing that I do, and then another thing that I do. It's funny how they're all kind of connectable though, or at least associatable, coming from the same brain.
Oh, exactly. Just different faces of the same coin, sort of.
Right, right. Stephen King's one of those guys that he can just make anything interesting or weave a story behind something, uh, just pick a random household object and you can make it like super creepy and interesting. And I've been kind of trying to hone that skill too, not so much the creepy part, but to find what's interesting and everything, to be easily awed in order to tell a good story, to note the details. So I
Yeah.
think that works well for journalists as well.
Yeah, it does. Is Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, I really appreciate your time, and I wish you well with your defense contracting company.
Thank you.
And I have to check out your book. Is it available to buy?
Yes, it's on Amazon, and the title is Edward in Between. And my pseudonym is Normus Nutsack, which is a short for enormous nutsack. But I'll probably have to change that someday when I grow up.
Yeah, I that's awesome. Well, I'll have to check it out. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you have a wonderful day. It was really nice talking with you, and very good luck with your documentary. I hope it turns out spectacular.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how the next 5 years go.
Right? It will be all the years. There's no bad days. I
No,
hope you
but
have a good one. It was nice talking with you.
okay, take care.